Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
Welcome to the Two Towers Talk Show. My name is John F. Allen, Tower 1 of the Two Towers.
I'm R.J. Sullivan, Tower 2.
And we are here with a very special guest, someone we've been wanting to talk to for quite a while. We're very honored to have on our show today. We have Mr. Brandon Easton, screenwriter and author, and he's here to give us an interview. Welcome to the show, Brandon.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure to be here today.
Appreciate that. You know, you're our first interview, and we're going to see how this goes. But John knew how to pick someone that I'd get particularly excited about because Agent Carter is a show that, as I was telling you right before we came on, I've been a big fan from the very beginning, and I was even more excited when we got to the end of season 2. So glad to have you here.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I can say that definitely the writing staff and the production staff of Agent Carter definitely appreciates every single fan we have.
That's good.
So let me just get right to it. What have you heard? You guys coming back for season 3?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to be funny or coy. I literally don't know because I can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's a lot of rumors that we've been renewed, but I can also say beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's been just as many rumors that we've been canceled.
Right.
So until ABC themselves releases an official press release stating we've either been canceled or renewed, it's still speculation. I honestly don't know because I'm literally just a writer on the show. I'm not a producer level.
Right.
I'm guessing that the folks at a higher tier than myself have more information than me. But as far as I know, as of this moment, we're not coming back. But that could change. Again, I don't know. I mean, literally, That could change overnight. I don't know.
Okay. I just thought I'd jump right to the thing foremost on my mind because
everybody's been asking. Everybody's been talking about it, but the reality is there's been no official word from ABC, the studio, or the network yet. So we'll find out.
All right, I will take that at face value for what it is, and I've got my fingers crossed for the future, and hope we're gonna get some good news soon.
All right, so Brandon, I have a question for you. As a kid, for myself, I was always into comics and genre fiction. But that kind of left me feeling alienated because that's not what a lot of the black kids in my neighborhood were into, But what's your experience with that?
Well, I mean, I think I was fortunate in a way. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and I was born and raised there. I spent most of my life there until I was about 17 to 18. I went off to college. And Baltimore is a very African-American city. It has been a very black city for quite some time. I think one of the pluses of being in a majority African-American town, just like if you're a white guy and you're from a majority white city or town, you get every kind of person within your own ethnic group in the sense that you have upper class, middle class, working class, and poor. So I was in a community that had rich black folks, middle class blacks, working class blacks, and poor blacks, whatever you want to say. And most of the guys I grew up with, and I grew up with like all kind of kids too. I mean, there was a lot of working class white folks and Asian, and I didn't really grow up around too many Latinos because there weren't a lot of Latinos in Baltimore when I was growing up. Mm. But I grew up in a pretty diverse community, and I didn't really get ostracized or get made fun of for liking comic books in a genre. I mean, there were folks who definitely weren't into any of that stuff, but we didn't really hang out with those kids,
That's not a black thing.
I kind of feel like it really became more pronounced. What you're describing became more pronounced when I got to high school, where, the social groups and the cliques and all that stuff started to kick in. Women became a thing that I became interested in at the time. So you started to see a shift in how people started to carry themselves. I mean, between the ages, I guess, of like 6 and 13, I didn't really care how I carried myself. I didn't really care what I looked like. But when you start to hit 14 and 15, you start to be aware of fashion. You start to be aware of getting your hair cut. You start to be aware how you smell and things of that nature.
Right.
So I think that when I got to high school and the popularity clicks and the wages of dating started to kick in, I think that it became more of an issue. But growing up, I didn't really feel ostracized or made fun of because I love comics and animation and science fiction. I mean, everybody around me, at least in my circle, was very similar to myself. So I was very fortunate not to have to deal with that until later. And even then, to be absolutely honest, I mean, I would say that it didn't really become a thing until college, where I started to notice that there were men and women around me who were into the stuff I was into, but they pretended not to be when all the popular people were around.
Right,
Which I found to be very strange and very hypocritical and very weak-willed, I think.
Uh-huh. I can get that.
Yeah.
There was my generation, it would have been Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then Doctor Who is supposedly incredibly popular on college campuses now. Someone's watching it, so.
Right.
I just want to open it up and kind of get your life story a little bit. So this question, I think, really sets you up to kind of really tell us your background on how you went from being a fan growing up to things working out to where you got your first professional project and where things went from there.
Let me see. I didn't hear the beginning of your question. It kind of dropped out. What was the beginning? I'm sorry.
I said you started off as a fan and then you ultimately got a professional project. And so what was the path there? I just kind of want to hear your story on how that happened.
Oh, my God. I mean, wow. I'm trying to figure out where to begin. You have a more specific question? Because like my path would take about 45 minutes to describe.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out, I mean, seriously, I'm trying to figure out a good place.
I have one for you. Did you know that this is what you were going to do pretty much growing up?
All right. Well, no. When I was very, very young, I wanted to be an astronaut. I was heavily influenced, obviously, by Star Trek, Star Wars, and the Space Shuttle program,
Sure.
which up until the Challenger explosion was NASA's crowning jewel.
Right.
Crown jewel during the early 80s. So, I was born in 1974, so I came of age during the Space Shuttle program.
Yep.
So I wanted to be an astronaut more than anything else. And then when the Challenger exploded, and I don't mean this as a joke, but literally when the Challenger exploded, that really stopped me wanting to be an astronaut. Because
Makes sense.
death became so real to me in space exploration. I was like, you know what, this is not for me. So as I grew older, I started to think about being an actor because I really loved the make-believe aspect of it. And then I think that I started to, when I got to college especially, I started to shift towards short story writing, and two of my undergraduate writing professors both said, you have talent as a writer, and you should probably go in that direction. So what I wound up doing was developing and reading every book I could find about creative writing, particularly science fiction writing.
Mm-hmm.
I started, and this is during the days before the internet. So I got to college in 1992, and that was during the days of the Deja news groups through Internet Relay Chat, or IRC, as they called it.
Yeah, that was.
So I was, and there were groups like rec.arts, like writing.miscellaneous, or rec.arts.Star Trek. Or, there were all these different news groups that were, right. There were thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them, covering every subject matter you can imagine. And through that, I actually got to meet a couple of Marvel Comics writers at the time. Mm-hmm. One of them was named D.G. Chichester, who used to write Daredevil. And he used to write Daredevil during the period of time when Daredevil switched to a blue and red battle armor suit.
Wow, yeah.
And that was the late 90s. Actually, sorry, that was the mid-90s. So I got a chance to talk to people and connect with people who, under any other circumstances, I would not get a chance to meet.
Right.
So that was a major formative moment in my writing career, just having the internet play such an amazing role in the early days of the internet before it got ruined by AOL. And I mean that because I noticed that the minute that America Online became a thing and people all over this nation could now log on, mm-hmm. It was a major shift in the quality and the kind of interaction you'd have. I had never been called a racial slur. I had never been cursed at in any discussion online
Oh,
until
yeah.
after America Online became a real thing. And it was a major shift in our whole world. Anyway, to make a long story short, jumping ahead. So I graduated from Ithaca College, and I moved to Boston. And while in Boston, I went to Boston University, where I earned my master's of fine arts in screenwriting. And basically after that, and I can jump ahead a bit because there was a lot of stuff that happened in my life.
Sure.
But I moved to New York City after that, and I taught U.S. history and economics in New York City public schools for 6 years. And at the end of that 6th year, I kind of felt that I had to make a choice for the rest of my life. I was 34 years old at the time. And I had to make a decision of whether or not I was going to be a teacher the rest of my life or work in educational policy reform, which is really where I wanted to go. Or I would really give my screenwriting dreams in Los Angeles a chance, because the simple reality is if you want to work in TV or film and you want to work within the system, you got to move to Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. So in 2008, I moved to LA, and I followed up on a couple of connections I made while at Boston University, and I was shocked that these people actually remembered me. And after about suffering for about 3 years, because I moved here in 2008, which was right after the writer's strike of 2007. And also, incidentally, it was right smack dab in the middle of the housing crisis, which destroyed the U.S. economy and returned it to a state of 1929 level of economic prosperity, which was during the first Great Depression. So it was probably the worst time I could have possibly moved to Los Angeles in my life. So pretty much that's what happened to me. And I was working 3 jobs here. I was really suffering. I mean, things did not go well for me between 2008 and 2011. And around the middle of around the end of 2010, early 2011, one of my connections put me in touch with the showrunner, or one of the showrunners of the Thundercats reboot at Warner Brothers Animation. And I'd say about a year into their production, I got a call back saying they'd like me to come in, and I didn't know what they wanted me to do, and it turned out to be a writer's meeting. So I pitched some ideas, and incidentally, they were looking for a way to refine one of their concepts for episode 24 of the Thundercats show, and that ended up being my first writing credit in Hollywood ever. So I co-wrote that episode with a writer named Todd Casey, and pretty much from then on, that was the beginning of my writing career in LA.
All right, that's pretty great. All right, my best friend was an '80s Thundercats fan, and said many good things about the reboot. He was very impressed with it overall. So that's pretty cool that you got a chance to work on that show as your first television credit.
Yeah, I mean it was a dream come true. I mean, I had no idea that was going to happen. I mean, I had been, and like I said, this is not a sob story, but I had been really struggling. And things were really bad. I mean, you want to talk about paying dues out here. I mean, I paid every due that a man could pay without being murdered or raped. And I'm not saying that as a joke. I mean, literally everything bad that could happen to a person outside of murder and rape happened to me here in Los Angeles.
So I'm guessing
things were bad.
I'm guessing there was no teaching gig in LA or anything like that then, huh?
No, I was teaching. That was one of my 3 jobs.
Oh, okay.
It's just that I was an adjunct professor at Westwood College, which is pretty much the same as standing outside of a subway with an empty beer can, rattling it for change.
Wow.
So an adjunct professor anywhere is horrible, and an adjunct professor at a for-profit college that had so much competition for teaching gigs. I mean, I had to work 2 other jobs just to survive. I mean, that shows you how much that was helping me.
Right. So, had you ever reached a point where you were like, you know what, this just isn't working, I need to go back and start over? Or did you stick with it and just figure I'm staying here till it happens? Yeah,
I had a fire and I was homeless for 3 weeks. And while I watched my apartment burn down, I said to myself, maybe this is a sign for me to go back east.
Yeah,
and
wow.
It took about literally 36 hours of soul searching. And I didn't understand what that phrase or word meant, soul searching, but I understood that night. And over the next day and a half, I literally had to come to terms with whether or not I was going to stay here and tough it out or go back to the East Coast where my family and friends and everybody who really cared about me, still are. So it was not easy, but I made I guess a contact with myself to go and give it. I figured basically I would give it I give it one more year. Mm-hmm. So I had my fire in January of 2010, and I decided to stick it out until May of 2011, which is my birthday. My birthday's at the end of May. Uh-huh. So I said if I didn't have anything happen by May of 2011, I would just go back to the East Coast. And I got Thundercats early in the middle of 2011, right before my birthday.
All right. Well, we're glad that happened.
Oh, I'm glad too. Thank you.
And then I'm sure there's more of a process between Thundercats and then getting on to Agent Carter. But John has a question. It's a little out of chronology, but I think we probably want to jump to that at this point.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. One of the questions I had, we've been Facebook friends for a while, and we chit-chatted every now and again. We do have a common point of reference besides both being authors and both being into the comic book scene and such. But I noticed on your Facebook page you talked about a project you're working on called Laceration. What can you tell us about that?
Okay, Laceration is a proof of concept comic book, meaning that it's not really being slated for release nationwide. It's not going to go to a publisher. It's being set up so that my agents and managers can send it off to producers and showrunners and studios so they can consider it for possible adaptation into a TV series.
Okay.
My concept for Laceration is a near-future sociological science fiction idea that's basically postulating what would happen during a second U.S. Civil War in the near future. And in my story, an African-American Air Force intelligence officer ends up leading the rebel army filled with right-wing, white supremacist militias and so forth and so on. So the question is, how did he even end up in that position, and what are they after? So Laceration is something I had been working on conceptually for quite some time, and I was just trying to figure out, in a lot of ways, how to make that a reality. And it's taken me literally about 5 years to develop that to where it makes sense. So that's what you're that's what you saw on my Facebook page.
Oh, okay. It looked, the concept of what I saw looked very interesting to me, and I'm glad that you were able to clarify a little bit more exactly what it means and what it's about. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this project as it develops. Definitely keep me in the loop, and maybe we can have you back later on once I'm claiming it. Once this gets greenlit and everything's ready to go, that you can come back on our show and maybe talk about it more in depth. So
sure.
I'm sure our viewers would really love to hear about it. I know I would. I'm going to hand it over to RJ to ask you another question here.
Just to follow up. Well, first to follow up on that, how close is that concept piece to being completed? Is it pretty much done, or?
The script for the first issue is completely done. The artist is working on it, hopefully as we speak. The pilot, I haven't started writing the actual script for the pilot because I want to see basically where it goes in terms of visuals and also in terms of interest. So I'm probably going to be putting together an outline, a pilot outline for that in the next couple of months. But right now, I'm really just trying to focus on getting staffed again on a show someplace or somewhere, or hearing about Agent Carter. And there's no guarantees the producers would even ask me back, even if Agent Carter does come back. So it's basically a good idea for me to have all my balls, you know what I mean? Like when you throw all your balls in the air. Right. I don't mean to sound that in any kind of weird way. But, you have all your options out there. You don't want to, count all your chickens. So you just want to keep as many tentacles into the industry as possible. So that's where I'm at right now.
All right, there's a lot of metaphors in there, but yeah, I followed you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to change up again. On your pages, I saw a reference to what John and I both were talking about is what looked like a really interesting documentary, the one you put together called Brave New World, Black Sci-Fi and Fantasy Writers of the 21st Century.
Brave New Souls.
I'm sorry?
It's called Brave New Souls.
Oh, I'm sorry. The note's cut off here. Okay, as you say. That sounded fascinating. How did that come about, and where can people find it if they want to check it out?
Sure. All right. Well, I'll start at the beginning. During my really horrible times here in LA,
Okay.
one of the things I had noticed online, and this is something that I talk about a lot, and this is where the controversy, I guess where people consider me controversial, I don't know, or people get upset when I talk about this. But I always find that within the black geek community, especially online, there's this incessant level of whining and complaining, pretty much all the time, about there not being enough black this, there's not enough black that, black this, black that, where are the black writers, where are the black comic books, where are the black this? And the reality is there's a lot of African American and African creators, period, worldwide, who are doing speculative fiction in, everywhere. I mean, I've met people from the Caribbean, I've met people from West Africa, I've met people who are African who are from parts of Asia, I've met people who are from Canada, I mean Latin America, the whole 9 yards. And yet, for whatever reason, this very unhappy black fan base community online can't seem to find any of these people.
Right.
And what I wanted to do was look at all the people who were near me and people I'd met during my travels who initially had signed what I call professional deals. So I was looking for people who had deals with established publishing houses, people who were TV writers, people who had done films that had been distributed internationally and U.S. through a Hollywood system, mainly because I wanted to show that there were folks already working within the system who, for whatever reason, people weren't paying attention to. Mm-hmm. I don't know how these people slipped through the cracks, but, you have people like N.K. Jemisin, who is a Nebula and Hugo Award nominee. You have people like Nnedi Okorafor, same thing. You've got folks like Daniel Jose Older, if I'm saying his name correctly, who has broken out as an Afro-Latino creator. You have folks like Jeffrey Thorne, who wrote for Leverage and now The Librarians, which is on both Raw and TNT. You have folks like Kevin Grevious, who I tried to get interviewed. I couldn't ever get the interview set up with him. Then you have a black comic book company coming out of St. Louis, Missouri called Lion Forge Comics, who I've worked for years, who have been doing amazing work. I could just keep going on, but my point is that there's all these folks out there who, for whatever reason, just aren't getting the attention they deserve. So I decided with my meager funds at the time, I would just get a camera, some sound recording equipment, and just interview people I could get to. So at the time, I was living in LA, and I was visiting family back on the East Coast in New York and Baltimore, and I also was paid by Lion Forge to fly out to St. Louis and go up to Chicago with them during C2E2 a few years back. Mm-hmm. So during that production period, I think it was 2013 if I'm correct, I got to talk to a lot of folks and I recorded them. And I put it together and, I first distributed it through a independent digital distribution house, and then I got it on Amazon, where it is today. So if you go on Amazon Instant, you can download or stream Brave New Souls, Black Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of the 21st Century, anytime you like. So right now it's up there, and hopefully people are checking it out.
Well, cool, because I'm actually getting Amazon next week, along with Netflix, or not next week, next month, for the first time, for a number of reasons that have nothing to do with that, but I'll be all set up to watch it. So I'm glad to know that. Let's see, John, your turn.
And before I ask you this question, I just want to follow up on that.
Sure.
That's something that I can definitely understand and empathize with in regards to black creators, being black creator myself. And having published a novel, and I've been working within the publishing, small press, and then self-publishing industry for a few years now. So I know when a lot of people are coming up, well, where are all the black writers? Well, where are all the black artists and things? I'm like, I'm right here. Why can't you see me? I mean, my presence, from being on Facebook, I'm everywhere. And I mean, yet and still it's like, well, I didn't know you. Well, why is that? I mean, are you just ignoring our existence or what? I mean, you know, and it's kind of frustrating, you know, for black creators when that happens, and it's like,
Right.
you know, we also have to deal with some folks within our community who, you know, think that this is not something that black folks should do or can do. And,
Right. Yeah.
and that's something that irks me too. It's like, you know, black people have been writing science fiction since W.E.B. Du Bois. I mean, they've uncovered some of his work.
Yep.
You know, that was science fiction. I mean, of course, none of the publishers back then wanted to publish it for obvious reasons. But I mean, you know, it proves that we've been doing this for a long time, decades, almost a century here now, and yet and still some people find it difficult to comprehend or difficult to find, and I think that's kind of silly, but not to make too fine a point of it, but at the same time I want people to know unequivocally that we do exist, we're here. Now to segue into the actual question that I have, we both have a common acquaintance in Anthony Montgomery, and I know that
Yes.
you did you helped him, you co-wrote the Miles Away graphic novel.
Yes.
What was your experience working on that project with Anthony?
Well, I mean, I met Anthony, wow, I think it was Comic-Con 2010, San Diego Comic-Con in 2010. I want to say that was correct. And we had spoken about a bunch of different things, and he had said to me straight up, you know, eventually I'm going to be doing this young adult kind of a teen black superhero character. And, you know, since I had a background as a comic book writer, and I've been writing comics since 2002, actually, he thought we should work together. So we got along personally, and so we worked on that. And it was a challenge because he had this massive universe that he wanted to condense into a graphic novel so that, you know, he can get attention to turn that eventually into an animated series. So it took about a year and a half, almost 2 years, to get that project completed, because working in the comic book industry, particularly independently, is literally one of the hardest things, I would say. I think it's one of the hardest things you could do on the planet, because once you hand off your script to an art team, you have no guarantee, even if you have a contract, that they're going to finish. And we had so much trouble dealing with the artists, and it sucks because you want to give folks a chance. I mean, I'm a very big believer in giving somebody their first chance, or giving somebody a project that'll get them some attention. And the art team, the initial art team we worked with, just didn't do what they were supposed to do. It was an eye-opener for Anthony, who had come from a world of professionals. And I had to explain to him, look, the comic book industry is anything but. So, you know, I know that you're upset. I know that, you know, this is a shock to your system, but I hate to say, I had to say, look, dude, I told you so. This is how it is. You know, and I warned him profusely before we started working that when you work in the comic book industry, you have no idea how long it's going to take to get a project done. So luckily, we ended up with a art team eventually that finished what they started, and that was a great experience finishing the book, you know.
Right.
But there were a lot of roadblocks early on, as there are in independent comics.
And I understand that that's out there and available now.
Yeah, I believe you can get Miles Away through Anthony Montgomery's website. I think you can buy it from him directly now. So if you go to, I believe it's the Anthony Montgomery, or if you go to Google and look up Anthony Montgomery website, you can go get it that way. You can get it directly from him.
And just to interject here, for those of you watching the show that may not be familiar with Anthony Montgomery, he played Travis on the Enterprise television show. He's an actor out in California. He's currently on General Hospital, I believe, as a regular there. And he's appeared on Grey's Anatomy and several other television shows, and has been in a couple of feature films. So just in case you didn't know who we were talking about, you can go look him up and check him out. And just to also reiterate what you were saying, Brandon, I understand completely because I'm in the middle of writing a 7-issue miniseries for a publisher out of England called All
cool.
Nights, and it's my first foray into comic book writing. Of course, I've been reading comics for 40 years, so it's been one of those situations where this is kind of like a dream come true, but I know that a lot of these things are slow going and, back and forth, and so I understand exactly where you're coming from with that. But I am excited, having seen the artwork for my words. I guess that's something that I really can't describe. I know you probably felt the same way when you first saw some of your words translated into visuals. I mean, you were kind of like euphoric and surreal about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you how that feels. I mean, I first broke into comics back in 2002 on a series called Arcanium from Dreamwave Productions. Mm-hmm. And seeing my work translate, I mean, the book was horrible, but it was just nice to see my words turn into reality. But I was completely not ready, and I wish I had the chance to go back in time and redo that, because it would be so much better now as an adult. But as a younger guy who was chomping at the bit to break in, it was just a really wacky experience. And but unfortunately, I had to learn harsh lessons, but I definitely learned from that.
Well, I'm ready to jump forward a bit and get into Agent Carter.
Yeah.
If you want to kind of summarize the transition from Thundercats to Agent Carter, I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about that. But how did you end up? Did you jump in on season 2? I gather that's the case, and then
yes.
Were you brought in to kind of talk about the overall arc, or were you handed your 10th of it? How did that process come about?
Okay, all right. Well, there's two things, and I'll give you a little bit of background on how TV writing works. First, we'll start at the beginning. After Thundercats, I was still doing comic books. I had released my first original graphic novel, which was called Shadow Law, in 2012. I had won a 2012 Glyph Award for that, for Best Writer. Awesome. Then I worked on Transformers Rescue Bots for the Hub Network, which I don't believe no longer exists, but I had done an episode of that show, which is it's geared toward younger audiences. Mm-hmm. And after that, I was hired by Lion Forge Comics, and I was signed to a 6th graphic novel deal, which went through 2014. At the end of 2014, I applied to... Actually, in 2014, I was nominated for an Eisner Award, which is the comic book industry's Academy Award, basically, for work I did on a comic called Watson and Holmes.
Right. Congratulations on that nomination. I read about
Thank
that.
You.
That's really an honor. I mean, I just can't believe I have a trouble believing that I actually know somebody that was nominated for something like that. So,
well, I appreciate that. So from there, at the end of 2014, I applied to the Disney ABC writing program. And one thing, I'll explain a little bit about all that. Now, in Hollywood, obviously, there's issues with diversity and hiring practices, both in front of the camera and behind the camera. Mm-hmm. And the industry has developed a series of programs, like CBS has a writing program, NBC has one called Writers on the Verge, HBO just started one, Universal has one, and Nickelodeon has one too, and I think Fox has one. So there's all these programs out there for writers of diverse or underrepresented backgrounds, although white folks are more than welcome to apply, and many white folks have won these, so it's not like it's keeping white folks out. It's just that it's trying to address a serious need for diverse voices behind the camera. Now, with all that said, one of the best, if not the best, is the Disney ABC writing program, because out of all of them, I believe that's the only one that pays you. So about anywhere between 1,500 to 3,000 people apply every year, and out of that number, only 8 are chosen.
Wow.
And in 2015, I was one of those 8. So getting in is notoriously difficult, and once you get in, it's not that it gets any easier. You just have to keep proving yourself every day that you belong. So, with that being said, once you're in the ABC writing program, you are assigned mentors both within the studio and mentors who work for the studio or network, usually producers who have deals with the studio. And it gets really complicated. So to jump ahead a little bit, luckily one of my mentors is Michelle Fazekas, who happened to be at the time one of the showrunners of Marvel's Agent Carter. Right. So Michelle Fazekas and me, we got along very well. And during the program, one of the whole points of the program is to get you staffed on a show underneath the umbrella of whatever studio you're working for. So in my case, I was underneath the Disney ABC umbrella, which encompasses tons of networks and TV series.
Right.
So after a few months of me going on interviews with various shows and meeting with producers and showrunners and things of that nature, I was offered a spot on Marvel's Agent Carter. Now this is how it works. I mean, when you're a staff writer on a TV show is literally the lowest level. Literally. I mean, there's nowhere lower for you to go other than be a writing assistant, which is no disrespect to writing assistants, because that's one of the hardest jobs also to get in this whole business. To this day, I don't know how anybody becomes a writer's assistant, because I tried from 2008 all the way up to 2015 to get a writer's assistant gig, and to this day, I still don't know how you get one. Wow. So props to all the writing assistants. To give you the hierarchy real quick, because a lot of people don't know how this works. The hierarchy on a TV show in a writer's capacity is, starting from the lowest, is it's staff writer, story editor, executive story editor, producer, co-producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, and then executive producer, which also is showrunner. So I was at the bottom. So I was not brought in to do anything other than sit there and learn, because that's what a staff writer has to do. And if you have any talent, then you pitch ideas. But a lot of the times as a staff writer, you're not coming in there to fix anything. You're not coming in there to guide anything. You're coming in there because somebody somewhere wants to give you a chance to become a writer. And they've been impressed by either your writing ability or your ability to fit in a room. And there are a lot of politics to being in a writer's room in Hollywood. A lot of it has to do with whether or not you're a complete jackass or not. And I really mean that, literally. There are people who are really talented but cannot be around other people all day. Because when you're in a writer's room in Hollywood, you are literally in a room with people with the door shut, anywhere between 8 to 15 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Wow. And
you need to be able to fit in. And that does not mean you're going to like everybody. It doesn't mean you're going to be friends with everybody. But it means that you need to have the type of personality to where you can be disagreeable, or you can disagree without being disagreeable, as Martin Luther King would say.
Right.
So you got to look at it from that perspective. So I was not brought in to guide anything. I was not brought in to do anything except. Plus, when you're coming from one of these so-called diversity programs, you are a free writer for a year. So that means the show does not have to pay your salary. And the other side of it is that most staff writers don't get an episode. So I was fortunate to not only get in on a Marvel show, but I was also assigned a script as a staff writer. I mean, that's something that does not happen, usually. And if it does happen, you don't get a whole script to yourself. Somebody co-writes it with you. So, so I got a whole script to myself. And the fact I got assigned one at all is shocking, but then I got a script to myself. So that blew my mind when I was told that. So that's my experience on the show. I had no idea what the story arc for season 2 was going to be. They didn't even have an idea of what season 2 was going to be, except that she was going to be in L.A.
Okay.
That's all we really agreed on in the beginning. That's what was agreed on. And then we started talking about the Cold War, the Blacklist, the fact that she was going to have a love interest that was going to be a man of color. In this case, he was African American. We were going to talk about Whitney Frost, the villain. We were going to make some changes to Marvel Cinematic Universe, and so forth and so on. But to make a long story short, that was my role. I was not really brought in to do anything other than shut up and learn and eventually contribute, which luckily I got to do.
And then you got to write a script of your own, which, as you say, doesn't happen. So that's amazing. But
it does not.
So I guess to set this up, I watched both seasons as a story arc, and one of the things I love about Agent Carter in particular, and so many shows that have it together, are able to present multiple episodes with a single tone and a single voice and a single story, so that you don't notice the change in writers from script to script. I imagine there's a certain secret sauce there on how that happens, but if I understand correctly, you were probably given, here's your starting point and here's your stopping point, and how many things were you able to control throughout the section that you were given?
Okay. I'll explain this. Okay, to answer your first question about how they were able to make it seem like no writers were brought in or there wasn't any changes, pretty much most of the original staff from season 1 came back for season 2. I think there were only 2 new people, and that was me and Sue Chung, who was the executive story editor. We were the only 2 people brought in to season 2. Everybody else was from season 1.
Gotcha.
The way it works is you break down, first of all, you figure out how many episodes you've been budgeted for by the studio. So in this case, we got 10 episodes for season 2. Then you break down the very, very broad incidents for each episode, including character moments, big twists and turns, and basically what you want to get to as an ending for whatever your season is.
Right.
Then you break down each act from each episode one by one. So everybody contributes to each episode. Then once the outline is fully constructed in its very broadest sense, then that outline is given to a writer who then rewrites that outline, which is then given to the producer. The producer says, now go write that script once they greenlight it, and you go off for about 10 days to go write your script. Then you come back, and there's rewriting back and forth, and then that script is sent off to the network and studio, and in this case, Marvel, for them to greenlight it or make changes, particularly budgetary, because obviously, it's all about money. Special effects cost thousands of dollars per second. And you also have to consider, there's all this stuff that I never even thought about until I became a TV writer.
Right.
But you got to consider stuff like budgets, location, time of day, when actors are going to be available and when they're not, and special effects. These are all things that come into the creative process that you don't think about until you actually have to do it. So we got up to episode 207 and 208, and for season 2 and season 1, we shoot 2 episodes at a time. So 207 and 208 were shot at the same time. And I was originally assigned 208, but we had some things happen behind the scenes which I'm not going to get into. And so we moved me up to 207, which changed a lot of stuff because I had my mind set on writing 208 because there were certain incidents that had to be discussed. So I came up with some new ideas. So 207 was a heavy character-based episode, mainly focusing on Wilkes, Anna, and Whitney Frost as we saw it. And so I wasn't really told this is my section. It was more like, okay, we're all contributing to this. This is what we're coming up with. And then when we got to 207, we all collectively broke out the episode, act by act, scene by scene. I was given my broad outline. I took it home, rewrote that, gave it to my producer. They gave it back to me. Then I wrote the script and handed it back to my bosses. And then it went through its, the typical process. And then after that, it was passed on to the studio and network for final approval. And that's how TV is done, folks.
There you go. Well, and I just wanted to mention a couple of things because I went back last night and I rewatched that episode isolated from the arc because I'd watched all 10 episodes already. Enjoyed the entire arc, and I thought that whether by accident or through purposeful rewriting on your part, I thought that you. I'm a big Bridget Regan fan.
Well, so am I.
and I thought you gave Dottie a couple of really great scenes in that, and I didn't know how much of that was you or just by necessity of the the outline, but I thought that the scene where they've got her, you know, in the chair, and the back and forth between her and her torturer, and the way she kind of turned tables on things, that was so wonderful. I really enjoyed every second of that. So
thank you. So much credit for Dottie has to go to the producers and the showrunners, because they came up with so much of who she is.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second tier of credit has to go to Bridget Regan for being able to create such an amazing, complex, detailed Black Widow character.
Right.
Because she's the first Black Widow, which hasn't been explicitly stated, but it's clear she's Black Widow.
Did not know that.
So, I mean, as an actor, not only can she fight, but she's fluent in multiple languages.
Mm-hmm.
And she's just an amazing person, period. And working with her, just sitting back and watching her go, and along with Wynn Everett, who played Whitney Frost, and of course, not to take away anything from Haley Atwell or James Darcy or the rest, but it's like watching those two go at it, as well as Kurtwood Smith, who pretty much is like my favorite bad guy villain from RoboCop from all time. You know, like, you see, I mean, being on set and watching these people go was just astounding. You know,
so you were able to sit in on the filming.
Oh yeah, it's called covering set. Writers in TV are generally expected to be on set.
Wow, that must have been a rush.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been through that before. So I'll tell you, it was a game changer in my life. And I think about it, you know, I come from a working class background. I went through a lot of ups and downs growing up, and just standing on a set, just me even being there, I wasn't. I mean, looking at my life, I wasn't supposed to be in Hollywood. You know, I mean, guys like me supposed to be in jail or dead. You know, I mean, I'm not a thug or anything or a criminal, but you know, statistically, people think about African American men, and the first thing they think about is not TV right. You know, so it's just like the shock of me achieving a dream, being on set, and dealing with all the crazy, wonderful things. It just changed the way I viewed my life and viewed the world. Like, it made me realize, really, that anything is possible if you try. Mm-hmm. And I don't care where you come from. If you really want to do something, you got to do it. And you just got to take every hit, no matter how long it takes. It's going to hurt. People are going to stand in your way. People are going to hate on you. People are going to be jealous. People are going to just assume the worst of you, but you're going to keep fighting. I say that for anybody. I don't care what your background is. The road to a dream is never easy. It's never happy. It's just getting there is what makes it worth it, you know?
Can only say amen to that.
Yeah. I agree. You know, I never dreamt that even in my little meager piece of the entertainment world or in the literary world that I would be doing the things that I'm doing now. And you know, you are inspiring to me, definitely. So I mean, you know, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of what you've done. I'm proud of what you've achieved. I want you to definitely keep on doing what you're doing and give us more, because you give it good, man.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And also, never refer to yourself as meager, because you're doing it, man. I mean, one thing I've never done is finish a goddamn novel. So anybody who finishes a novel, to me, is doing something amazing, because I've been trying to finish a novel for 15 years. Actually, make that 25, and I still haven't done it.
There you go.
Well, I appreciate that, man. That's definitely a boost coming from you. I will never refer to myself as meager again, because
never do that.
I will never do that because Brandon Easton told me not to. I appreciate that, man. I really do.
And then coming back again, looking at the whole 10 episode arc, and then rewatching yours specifically. I really love that scene with Agent Carter and Jarvis in the car, where she's got the dilemma between the you know, she's usually so tough, and this the fact that you wrote in a vulnerable moment for her where we kind of see the person behind the agent there for a while. I thought again, whether it was planned or not, you wrote a great moment for those actors, and I was really touched by that moment when it came on the screen both times I watched it.
You know, and thank you. And to give them even more credit, James and Haley specifically, They were sitting in a car with no air conditioner, with the windows rolled up in the middle of the desert.
Wow.
Wow.
Just so you know, that it was like 95 to 100 degrees in that car, easily.
Well, it was a great moment for the show. It was a great moment for your script. I really I would say a great moment on the season. It was a part that stood out the first time I went through it, and you know, when you watch something like that, it's kind of like, okay, what was episode 7 exactly? Which is why I had to rewatch it. But you managed to get a lot of the parts that I look back on and remembered as favorite moments of the show. Of course, you didn't get the song and dance part, but you know, you can't have everything, right?
Well, you know, I remember when we were putting that together and we were coming up with these great ideas about the dance number. And that was a lot of fun.
That was
pretty fabulous. When I saw it the first time, I mean, literally, I wanted to start dancing. Because when I saw it, it was like we had talked about it so much, and a part of me is like, how are we going to pull it? How I wasn't a part of that, so I was already actually done with the show when they were shooting that.
Right.
So I was just like stunned to see first of all, how luminescent Haley looked in that sequence, and how flawlessly they pulled off a dance number when not everybody on crew, not everybody in cast is a song and dance person. So that was just that was just absolutely astounding to me.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, I guess you got to go back and rewatch the show, folks. But yeah, that's a really neat moment. Yeah, I just so glad that you agreed to be our first interview. Really glad to have you. I've really enjoyed this time. So pretty much, tell the folks how they can find you and to find out what you're up to.
Okay, well, first things first, I am on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
That's BRANDONEASTON. Very simple to remember. I'm also on Facebook as Brandon Easton. I am on Instagram as Shadow Law Write with 2 W's in the middle. It's the name of my first book. And WRITE, Shadow Law Write.
All right.
And if you're in the LA area, I'm going to be signing at the Comic Bug in Culver City on March 16th. I have a Transformers Deviations book coming out, which is Transformers Deviations #1. It's a one-shot that IDW Comics is putting out. And I wrote it, and what it is what if Optimus Prime survived the battle from Transformers the movie in 1986. So I get to rewrite the 1986 Transformers movie.
Well,
and that comic is coming out on March 16th.
I know that Transformers movie well. I think it's the best one of the bunch, personally. But that's very cool. Yeah, that's very neat. That's all. That's except for the fact it was a pleasure to talk to you. That's all I've got. How about you, John?
I have to concur with RJ. The fact that you granted us the interview, we're very appreciative of it. I'm sure our viewers are very appreciative. When we announced that we were interviewing you, it kind of blew up on Facebook. I mean, there was a lot of anticipation. I had a lot of people private messaging me saying, well, when is it coming on air, and when can I see it and everything. So you definitely have a following out there. So and we appreciate that you took the time to come out and to talk to us. That really means a lot. We really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. I mean, this is a great honor to be interviewed anytime. I mean, I'm always happy to talk to folks, and in any way I can help or just provide information, I'm always happy to do it. So, you know, thank you for promoting, and thanks for even having me on here to begin with. I really appreciate that.
We're glad to have you, and I've learned a lot more about you here in the last hour, and I think I'm a bigger fan than ever. But a lot of folks following me know that how big of a fan of the show I am, and everybody needs to keep your fingers crossed for a season 3. I hope we get that in the future.
Most definitely, and I'm definitely on that bandwagon. Again, thank you, Brandon, for granting us this interview and giving us the opportunity to talk to you, which has been a real treat. It's been a blast. And hopefully we'll have another slot open, you know, as it gets closer to the time for you to release some of your work, and we can go ahead and get you back on, and you can talk about it and let people know more about it as it gets closer to fruition. So look forward to that if you're willing.
Absolutely, anytime. Sure.
All right. All right. Well, thank you, Brandon, for being on our show. And folks, if you are interested in getting in contact with me, again, my name is John F. Allen, and you can reach me on Facebook or Twitter. You can also go to my website, which is johnfallenwriter.com, and that's going to be down at the bottom of your screen here. You can go ahead and go to that website, and then you'll be able to connect with me all the way around. What about you, RJ?
rjsullivanfiction.com. There's a link on there that has all the rest of the links for you to find me. So that's about it.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone who tuned in to watch our show, and we hope you're enjoying what you're seeing and what you're hearing thus far. We've got a lot more in store coming, so stay tuned. And you guys be safe out there. Hey, wow.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies. Be sure to check out our advertising partner, DC and Marvel, a universal alliance. They are a friendly Facebook community who offer digital comic book giveaways, games, tournaments, and viewing parties. Follow the link below and give them a look. You'll be glad you did.